Suzanne comes to the Maharshi. As Suzanne made the journey by train to Tiruvannamalai, kilometer after kilometer of arid splendor unfurled before her eyes, she saw tawny earth and tawny hills and giant piles of rocks that were the skeletal remains of ancient mountains. A desert vegetation of thorn scrub and cactus-like euphorbia scrabbled for existence in the dry, unrewarding soil. Unexpectedly, there would be a copse of tall trees revealing the presence of underground water, the sudden brilliant green of paddy standing waist high, or the mellow gold of mustard fields. Early in the morning, the train slowed as it approached a mountain taller and standing apart from the rest. She did not recognize it at once and thought only that it looked very denuded and ancient. Its soil was eroded and the rocky structure beneath was exposed like the ribs of a skeleton. It was only when they had gone around it and she saw its less rugged eastern aspect that she recognized it to be the hill Arunachala. In the early sunlight, it glowed a fiery red, and she remembered that Arunachala was held to be the manifestation of Shiva in the form of fire. She would learn that the entire hill is worshipped as Tejo Linga, the blazing mark of truth absolute. Declared in the Skanda scriptures to be the secret sacred heart center of Shiva, and hence the spiritual center of the world, for centuries it has been a much frequented place of worship and pilgrimage, as well as the abode of saints and sages. Suzanne and her two companions alighted at the small, neat station of Tiruvannamalai. Outside the station, they found a horse-drawn cart to take them to the ashram, which was about 5.5 kilometers from the town. Their vehicle took the big street, the main residential street of the town, which went up to meet the road skirting the base of the hill. The 13-kilometer-long circumambulatory road first passes between the massive wall of Lord Arunachaleswara Temple on the left and the majestic hill on the right. Once the road leaves behind the town and comes to open country, there opens for the traveler the vista of an antique landscape of temples, shrines, sacred tanks, and pilgrim halls. Some temples have filigree carved domes, others more primitive or of rough-hewn rock. In these simple dolmens, the deity is usually not freestanding, but carved in the solid stone, seeming to emerge only reluctantly into the airy dimensions of form. Stone is everywhere in evidence in Tiruvannamalai. From the rock of the hill itself, through the stone foundation of the great stone-stepped tanks, to the mandapams constructed from massive blocks of granite, which have stood the onslaught of the elements for centuries. Without the need of words, the stone transmits to the onlooker the message of the fundamental, full and enduring nature of being. Their vehicle passed a simple stone shrine which was dedicated to Shiva as Dakshinamurti, the divine yogi who teaches the ineffable truth in the silence of the spirit. He is the deity who faces south, and since south is the direction of death, he is also known as Rucha Yunjaya, the conqueror of death. Death indeed is conquered by awakening to the ultimate truth of ourselves and our world. Just after passing the shrine of Dakshinamurti, they reached their destination, announced by an archway bearing the words, Sri Ramanasramam. Entering the grounds, they dismounted from their vehicle under a big mango tree. To their left, there was a pond surrounded by trees, and ahead of them a small whitewashed building which turned out to be the ashram office. Upon reaching Ramanasramam, Chinna Swami, Bhagavan's younger brother and the ashram manager, or Sarvadakari, was on hand to greet them and welcome them with small packets of vibhuti as prasad. He called on Raja Ayer, the ashram postmaster, to take them to Bhagavan. Thus, their first steps in Ramana Ashramam were from the front gate directly to the entrance in the darshan hall wherein sat the master. They entered the hall with some apprehension, daunted by the prospects of what such an encounter might entail. But when they entered the hall, they found the embodiment of peace and tranquility seated on a sofa before them. Suzanne described seeing a slender, golden-skinned man in his late 50s. Except for a loincloth, he was completely bare. She thought that his face was very beautiful, not only because of the Brahmin fineness of his features, but above all because it had the highest expression of awareness that she had ever seen. There was about him a certain indefinable quality, the splendor of realization. She saw how the psychological labels which the modern mind tended to affix to spiritual experience turned out to be irrelevant when one was confronted with true spiritual achievement. When Raja Ayer introduced them to the Maharshi, the Maharshi nodded in acknowledgement and for a moment gave them his bare, unwavering attention, though he did not speak. Suzanne was so engrossed in her contemplation of him that at first she did not hear it when one of the attendants invited them to take a seat among the women. But this strange hybrid place of the Maharshi's room, half meditation hall and half suburban living room, was perhaps the last thing one would expect to find in a jungle hermitage. Apart from the incense burner which smoked before the couch, there was nothing to suggest that you were in a religious institution at all. The hall was a peculiar mixture of the public and the private, a home to which a theater had been attached, where a man who had no personal life lived out his hours in public view. There sat the sole inhabitant behind his little fence, his loincloth jarringly at odds with his suburban setting, so that he looked like some wild man of the woods imprisoned in a Victorian drawing room. For Ramana was one of the rishis of old, a relic from the age when giants walked the earth. He was a colossus in captivity, a caged tiger, eyes shining like amber among the potted palms and plastic rocks. Suzanne had by this time encountered her share of spiritual figures, but now she knew she had found her master.